Welcome to English Refine. I am Speaker 1, and I am here with Speaker 2. How are things on your end today?
Hey, I'm doing really well, thanks. Though I have to admit, after looking through all the research for today's conversation, I am, well, feeling a sudden mix of excitement and, absolute panic.
Oh, I completely understand that. It really changes how you look at the idea of moving across the world, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Because we are looking at a truly massive stack of information today. We are exploring the real, everyday reality of living in another country. And we are not just guessing here.
No, definitely not.
We have official digital nomad visa guides, detailed psychological reports on culture shock, checklists from global relocation companies showing all these hidden costs, and even advice from therapists on how to stay friends with people back home.
Exactly. The whole goal of our deep dive today is to help you, the listener, understand the true mechanics of this huge life choice. We want to look at why so many people are doing this, the very real, practical obstacles they face when they land, how they actually survive, not knowing the language, and finally, how going through all this friction leads to incredible personal growth.
Yeah, and we really need to start with the sheer number of people doing this right now because the statistics in our sources just, well, they blew my mind.
Oh, the numbers are huge.
We are looking at a total remote work revolution. According to the data, there are an estimated 35 million digital nomads globally right now.
Wow.
Yeah, 35 million.
Yeah.
And to put that in perspective, back in 2019, that number was just 7 million.
It is a staggering jump.
Mm-hmm.
And that jump, it represents a massive shift in how the world operates.
Totally.
Because of the rise of video calls and remote work software, people suddenly realized, hey, I do not need to sit in an office building to do my job.
Right. I can work from anywhere.
Exactly. And the countries around the world notice this too. They realize this group of 35 million people represents a $787 billion remote work economy.
That is so much money moving around the globe.
It really is.
And because countries want a piece of that money, they have created a brand new legal tool to attract these workers. It is called the Digital Nomad Visa.
Right.
I had heard this phrase before, but I didn't fully understand how it worked until I read these guides. How does this visa actually function?
Well, it is a fascinating concept.
Mhm.
A digital nomad visa is a special legal permit that allows you to live in a foreign country for a long period of time, usually anywhere from 6 months to 5 years.
Okay, wow. That is a long time.
Yeah, but there's a catch.
Uh-oh, what is it?
The strict rule is that you must work remotely for a company that is located back in your home country, or, at least somewhere outside of the country you're moving to.
Oh, I see.
You cannot take a job at the local bakery or the local tech firm. Currently, over 40 countries offer some version of this special visa.
I like to think of it with a simple analogy. It is basically like bringing your own food to a restaurant.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you are sitting at the country's table, you are using their internet, walking on their roads, renting their apartments, and buying their coffee. But your money, your food, comes entirely from the outside. So you are not taking jobs away from the local people.
That is the perfect way to explain it. It is why governments love these visas so much.
Right, it makes sense.
Because a traditional work visa requires a local company to hire you, which means a local citizen didn't get that job. But the digital nomad visa just injects fresh foreign money straight into the local economy without disrupting the job market.
But what really surprised me in the data is that this isn't just an option for rich executives. The income requirements to get these visas are, incredibly varied.
Yeah, they are all over the map.
Depending on the country, you have to prove you make anywhere from $24,000 a year up to over $100,000 a year.
Right.
It means this lifestyle is open to budget travelers, middle-class workers, and luxury seekers. You just have to know where to look.
Exactly. The destination you choose is completely driven by your personal goals and, well, your income level. The research breaks down several specific profiles.
Okay, let's hear them.
For instance, if you are a tech worker, the data strongly points to Estonia.
Estonia. That wouldn't be the first place, I guess. Why are tech workers going there?
Well, Estonia has built itself into a massive tech hub. They offer something called e-residency, which means you get a secure digital identity card that lets you sign documents and manage a business completely online.
Oh, that is super convenient.
Yeah, and their internet is famous for being incredibly fast. Plus, from a practical standpoint, they process these visas faster than almost anyone else in Europe.
Really? How fast?
You can get approved in just 15 to 30 days. You only need to prove an income of about $58,000 a year to qualify.
Getting legal approval to move countries in just 2 weeks is amazing.
It is super fast.
But okay, let's say I'm not a tech person. Let's say my dream is just to sit near the ocean, eat great food, and soak in a rich culture. Where does the data say those people go?
For the beach and culture lifestyle, Spain and Portugal are the absolute top choices right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Spain is incredibly attractive
Mm.
because they created a very specific tax rule just for digital nomads. If you get their visa, you pay a flat income tax rate of 24% for your first 4 years.
Wow, that is low.
Right. For many people coming from high-tax countries, that is a huge financial relief. And the barrier to entry is lower. You only need to show an income of about $28,000 a year.
That is very accessible. And what about Portugal? I feel like I constantly hear about people moving to Lisbon or Porto.
Portugal is booming for a few reasons. The cost of living is quite low compared to places like the UK or the US, and the climate is wonderful. You need an income of around $39,000 a year to qualify.
Okay, reasonable.
But the biggest mechanism driving people to Portugal is the long-term benefit.
What is that?
If you stay on this visa for 5 years, Portugal allows you to apply for permanent residency. So it is not just an extended vacation. It is a clear path to making it your forever home.
That is a huge selling point. Now, what if someone has a high income and their main goal is just keeping as much of their money as possible? What is the luxury high earner option?
Well, if tax-free luxury is the goal, the guides point straight to the United Arab Emirates, specifically Dubai.
Ah, of course.
Yeah, the income requirement jumps up here. You have to prove you make at least $60,000 a year.
Oh.
But the mechanism that attracts people is their tax law. The UAE has a 0% personal income tax rate.
0%.
So you keep everything.
You keep every single dollar you earn. Plus, it sits geographically right between Asian and European markets, making it a perfect hub for international business people.
A 0% tax rate is hard to ignore. But let's look at the complete opposite end of the spectrum. What if you were a freelance writer or a young designer and you were on a very tight budget?
The absolute best budget pick in the sources is Georgia.
Georgia. Okay.
Yeah, Georgia's requirements are incredibly welcoming. You only need to prove an income of $24,000 a year.
Oh, wow. And the cost of living there is remarkably low. You can live very comfortably on maybe $600 to $1,000 a month.
That is incredible.
It is. You still get fast internet, you're surrounded by gorgeous mountains, and just like the UAE, their specific digital nomad program is completely tax-free.
It is amazing how tailored these options are, but I think we need a reality check here.
Yeah, let's do it.
Looking at picturesque mountains in Georgia or beaches in Spain on social media makes it look so easy. Just pack your laptop and go. But the relocation company data paints a very, very different picture. The actual logistics of moving your life are brutal.
Brutal is the right word. This is where the fantasy crashes into reality.
Yeah.
The global relocation experts provided us with a long list of hidden costs. These are the expenses that almost nobody puts into their initial budget, and they can absolutely drain your bank account if you don't understand how they work.
Let's walk through these because I think anyone considering a move needs to hear this. The first hidden cost in the reports is customs duties and taxes. Now, I understand paying taxes on new things I buy, but if I'm just shipping my own old sofa and my own clothes to Portugal, why am I paying taxes?
Because border agencies do not look at your shipment as just your personal memories. They look at it as goods entering their economy.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah. Depending on the country, customs officials will look at your inventory list, estimate the value of your used furniture and electronics, and charge you a percentage of that value just to let the items cross the border.
That is so unfair.
And you cannot negotiate this. If they decide your old dining table is worth $500 and their import duty is 20%, you owe them $100 just to keep your own table.
That is incredibly frustrating. You already bought the table. Okay, what is the next hidden cost?
The next major drain on the budget is temporary accommodation.
Like a hotel.
Yeah, people often imagine they will land at the airport, grab the keys to their new apartment, and start living. The reality is that renting an apartment as a foreigner usually requires weeks of paperwork, background checks, and transferring funds.
I see.
Or maybe you found an apartment, but your shipping container with your bed is delayed at a port for a month.
So you are forced to live in a furnished short-term rental or a hotel, which is easily twice as expensive as normal rent.
Exactly.
And because you might not have a full kitchen, you are eating every meal at a restaurant. I can see how that would burn through your savings in a matter of weeks.
Oh, completely. And the delay mechanism itself is another hidden cost. The reports talk a lot about shipping variations.
What does that mean?
When you start planning your move in January, a shipping company might quote you $5,000 to move your boxes. But when the actual move happens in June, the price might suddenly be $7,000
Wait, how can they just change the price like that?
because international shipping is tied to global markets. If the cost of ship fuel goes up, they pass that cost to you. If a port is busy and charges a holding fee while your container waits to be unloaded, they pass that cost to you.
Wow.
Yeah, you have to budget for the final shipping cost to be significantly higher than the initial estimate.
Okay, and then there are the legal costs. The visa itself has an application fee, right?
Yes, but the application fee is just the tip of the iceberg. To even submit the application, you need documents. And those documents must be legally verified.
Like notarized.
Even more than that,
Yeah.
you will have to pay professionals to translate your birth certificates, marriage licenses, and bank statements into the local language.
Oh, right.
And you have to pay your home government for official police checks to prove you don't have a criminal record. Some countries require you to pay private doctors for a full medical exam, including chest x-rays, before they grant the visa.
Chest x-rays.
Yeah. Every single piece of paper costs money.
That sounds exhausting, and I know there is one hidden cost that is particularly stressful for animal lovers: moving with a pet.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
I think we just assume we can buy a ticket for the dog and put them on the plane, but the data shows moving a pet is a massive logistical operation.
It truly is. Moving a pet internationally can sometimes cost as much as moving a person. Airlines require very specific, heavy-duty travel crates that you have to buy.
Right.
You will have multiple expensive visits to the veterinarian. The destination country will require specific blood tests, like rabies titers, which take months to process. And your pet must have an international microchip.
And if you get any of that paperwork wrong, what happens?
If the paperwork isn't perfect, your pet can be put into mandatory quarantine when you arrive.
Oh, no.
Yes. This means your dog or cat is taken to a government holding facility for weeks or even months. Not only is this emotionally devastating for the animal and the owner, but you are also required to pay the daily boarding fee for that quarantine facility. It is a massive hidden cost.
Just thinking about leaving my dog in a quarantine facility makes me anxious. So you survive customs, shipping delays, translation fees, and the pet stress. You finally get the keys to your long-term apartment, but the costs don't stop there, do they?
No, because then you hit the settling in costs. When you rent a place in a new country, landlords often demand a huge amount of cash up front to protect themselves against foreign renters. You might have to pay your first month's rent, plus a security deposit equal to 2 or even 3 months of rent.
Right, and your new apartment is completely empty, so you have to buy all the boring things you threw away before you left. Brooms, cleaning spray, trash cans, salt and pepper, a shower curtain.
Exactly.
All of these small purchases add up to hundreds of dollars in the first few days.
They really do. The sheer volume of things to manage is why the relocation experts provided a strict timeline. You cannot do this in a month. The timeline shows the preparation must begin 6 to 9 months before you actually move.
Let's break down that timeline. What exactly are you doing 9 months out? It seems so far away.
Well, at 6 to 9 months, you are handling the heavy infrastructure of your life. This is when you start the visa applications because, as we saw with the police checks and translations, just gathering the documents takes months.
Makes sense.
This is also when you make the huge financial decision about your current home. Do you sell it?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you hire a property manager to rent it out while you are gone?
And the reports mention that if you have children, this is the critical window for schools. You can't just arrive in November and expect a local school to have space for a foreign student. You have to research international schools, apply, and pay deposits almost a year in advance.
Yes, and you also need to start going to doctors. You need to get any surgeries or major dental work done now while you're still on your home country's health insurance.
Oh, that is smart.
You also need to secure a long-term supply of any prescription medications to carry with you because your exact medicine might be illegal or unavailable in the new country.
Okay, so that is the big stuff. Then the timeline jumps to 3 months before the move. This is where it gets really real.
3 months out is pure chaos. The relocation guides say you must do a strict room-by-room inventory. You have to pick up every single object you own and make a decision.
Like what to do with it.
Exactly. Does this go in the shipping container? Does this go to a charity shop? Do I sell it? Or do I throw it in the trash?
And there's a very specific practical detail in the guides regarding electronics that I found fascinating. It is all about voltage.
Yes, the electrical appliances. Countries operate on different electrical grids and use totally different wall plugs. If you live in the US and you decide to pack your favorite expensive blender and ship it to Europe, you are wasting your money.
Wow. What happens?
The voltage in Europe is much higher. The moment you plug that American blender into a European wall, the motor will burn out instantly.
Oh, wow. So you literally have to go through your house 3 months early and sell your televisions, your hair dryers, your toasters, your coffee makers. You have to be ruthless.
You do. You strip your life down to the absolute essentials, which leads us to the final stage of the timeline.
Yeah.
Move-out day. Your house is completely empty. The movers have taken the boxes. What do you have to do?
According to the checklist, before you hand the keys back to the landlord or the new owner, you must take clear, date-stamped photographs of every empty room. You need undeniable proof that the carpets were clean and the walls were not damaged, so you can fight to get your security deposit back.
Very important.
Then, you obsessively check your bags to ensure you have your physical passports because your shipping container is gone. And finally, you have to have enough local cash in your pocket to tip the movers who carried your heavy boxes all day.
And while you are standing in that empty room, exhausted, there is one more massive, complex mechanism you have to understand. Your taxes.
Oh, taxes.
Yeah, just because you leave your country does not mean your home government forgets about you.
The official documents warn very strictly about the danger of double taxation. How does that actually happen?
The mechanism of double taxation is simple but brutal. You start working from your laptop in your beautiful apartment in Spain. Spain looks at you, living on their soil, and says, you need to pay us income tax.
Okay, that makes sense.
But depending on where you are from, your home country looks at your passport and says, you are still our citizen, so you owe us income tax on that same money. Without the right paperwork, both governments will legally demand a piece of your paycheck.
That would destroy your budget immediately. So how do you protect yourself from paying twice?
You have to utilize specific tax laws designed for expats. For example, U.S. citizens use a mechanism called the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion. But it is not a simple checkbox. To claim this exclusion, you have to definitively prove to the U.S. government that your real home is no longer in America.
But how do they measure that?
They use a strict physical presence test. You must prove with passport stamps and flight records that you were physically located in a foreign country for at least 330 full days out of a 12-month period.
330 days, that doesn't leave much room for visits home.
No, it doesn't. If you go back to the U.S. for a long holiday and you only hit 320 days abroad, you fail the test, and you might owe taxes to both countries. It requires intense organization and tracking of your travel dates.
When I look at all of this together, the unpredictable customs taxes, the pet quarantine fees, the timeline that takes almost a year, and the strict tax tracking, I realize that moving abroad is not like taking a long vacation. It is exactly like starting a new business.
That is a very accurate way to look at it. How so?
Well, when you start a business, you don't just to assume that machines will break, shipments will be delayed, and permits will cost more than you thought.
Right.
The financial guides suggest expats need a massive emergency fund, a buffer of 10 to 20% more money than they think they will need, because something will absolutely go wrong. You are the CEO of your own relocation, and you have to manage the logistics like a professional.
I think viewing yourself as the CEO of your move is a brilliant mindset. It prepares you for the friction.
So let's say the CEO has done a good job. You paid the buffer, the dog survived the flight, you took the photos, you have your 330-day calendar set up, and you are finally sitting on the couch in your new apartment in a foreign country. The physical move is finished. But according to the psychological reports we read, the moment the physical stress ends, a completely different type of stress begins.
Yes, the boxes are unpacked, but your brain is just starting the heaviest lifting. The psychology sources outline a very specific emotional journey that almost every expat goes through. It is universally known as culture shock.
You know, I always thought culture shock just meant being surprised that the food was spicy or the cars drove on the other side of the road. But the reports show it is a deep psychological mechanism. They break it down into 4 distinct phases. Let's walk through what this actually feels like.
Sure. The journey begins with phase 1, the honeymoon phase. This usually lasts for the first few weeks or maybe a couple of months.
Okay, so it starts out fun.
Oh, absolutely. During this time, your brain is treating the experience like a wonderful vacation. Everything is fascinating. You love the strange sounds in the street. You think the local language sounds beautiful. You go to a cafe and think, this coffee is so much better than back home. Your brain is actively filtering out the negative and focusing purely on the novelty and excitement.
I can completely imagine that feeling. You feel incredibly brave and adventurous, but the honeymoon always ends. And then you hit phase two, and the reports call this the frustration phase or sometimes the crisis phase. This sounds terrible. What causes the crash?
Well, the crash happens because the novelty wears off and the reality of daily survival sets in. The things that were cute and different last week are now just massive obstacles.
Ah.
The core issue is usually the language barrier. Your brain is working overtime just to understand basic information.
Give me an example of how that plays out in daily life.
Imagine you wake up with a terrible headache. Back home, you go to the pharmacy, grab a box of pills you recognize, pay, and leave. It takes 5 minutes. But in the frustration phase, in a new country, you walk into the pharmacy and you cannot read any of the boxes. You try to explain your headache to the pharmacist, but they don't speak your language. Yeah. You end up playing an embarrassing game of charades, pointing at your head, feeling confused and vulnerable. A simple 5-minute task takes an hour and leaves you completely exhausted.
And that exhaustion builds up every single day. The psychology reports say that during this frustration phase, people experience intense homesickness. But it is not just missing your friends. You start to feel genuinely angry at the new country. You start complaining. You say things like, why do they do it this way? It is so stupid. Back home, things work properly.
Exactly. You feel isolated and incompetent. Many expats experience actual physical symptoms like insomnia or digestive issues because of the chronic stress. This is the danger zone. This is the phase where a huge percentage of people simply give up, break their lease, and buy a ticket back home.
You know, reading about this frustration phase changed my perspective completely. When we feel that angry, anxious homesickness, we usually blame ourselves. We think, I am not strong enough for this. I have failed at this adventure. I made a huge mistake.
Right. People judge themselves so harshly.
But the psychological data says this frustration is not a failure at all. It is a biological mechanism. It is actually a healthy sign that your brain is actively trying to learn the new rules.
Yes, it is the friction of learning.
I picture it like a computer downloading a massive software update. When a computer is downloading a huge new operating system, it slows down, the fan gets really loud, the computer gets hot, and you can't open any other programs.
That is a great visual.
The computer isn't broken. It is just using 100% of its processing power to rewrite its internal code. That is exactly what your brain is doing in the grocery store when you can't read the labels. It is rewriting its code.
That is an incredibly helpful way to visualize it. Your brain is exhausted from processing thousands of new, unrecognizable signals every single day. If you understand that the computer isn't broken, you can forgive yourself for being tired. And if you don't give up, if you push through that exhaustion, you slowly transition into phase 3, the adjustment phase.
How do you know when you have reached the adjustment phase? What changes?
Well, the panic starts to fade. In the adjustment phase, your brain has successfully downloaded some of the new software. You have learned a few basic phrases, so the pharmacy isn't terrifying anymore. You know which gust to take without checking the map. You begin to understand the rhythm of the culture.
So you were making progress.
Exactly. You still make mistakes. Maybe you accidentally insult someone by using the wrong greeting, but instead of trying or getting angry, you can laugh about it. You are rebuilding a sense of humor and a daily routine.
That sounds like a massive relief. The heavy lifting is mostly done, which finally leads to phase 4, the adaptation phase.
The adaptation phase is the finish line. This is also called the acceptance phase. You no longer compare everything to your home country. You realize that the new culture's way of doing things isn't wrong or backwards. It is simply different. You feel comfortable in your own skin again. You feel like you truly belong in this new environment.
Now, arriving at that adaptation phase doesn't just happen by magic. You can't just sit in your apartment and wait for it. The corporate training materials for expats focus heavily on a specific skill needed to push through the crisis phase. They call it cultural intelligence, or CQ.
Right. Cultural intelligence is the secret weapon for expats. A lot of people mistakenly believe that if they just learn the grammar and vocabulary of the new language, they will fit in perfectly.
But that's not true.
No. CQ proves that language is only a small part of the puzzle. Cultural intelligence is your overarching ability to function effectively in situations characterized by cultural diversity.
The guides break CQ down into 4 distinct pillars. We really need to understand how these work together. What is the very first pillar?
The first pillar is drive. This is purely your internal motivation. It is the energy required to face the discomfort. Are you genuinely curious about how the local people live, or are you just trying to recreate your old life in a new place?
Okay, so you have to actually want to learn.
Yes. If you don't have the drive to understand the differences, the other skills do not matter. You will just isolate yourself.
Assuming you have the drive, you move to the second pillar, which is knowledge. And this isn't just knowing the capital city or the local food, right?
No, knowledge in CQ means deeply understanding the invisible values of the culture. It is studying their underlying rulebook.
Give me an example of an invisible rule.
For example, understanding how they view time. Does a meeting start at exactly 9:00 a.m., or does a 9:00 a.m. mean sometime in the morning? How do they view authority? How do they express disagreement? You have to study these social frameworks.
Once you have the knowledge, you have to use it. That is the third pillar, strategy. This is the planning phase.
Exactly. Strategy is taking your knowledge and applying it before you act. Let's say you are going to a dinner party with local neighbors. Your strategy phase involves thinking, okay, I know this culture values extreme politeness and formal greetings. Therefore, I will plan to bring a small gift, I will use their formal titles, and I will not discuss politics because my knowledge tells me that is considered rude here.
And the final pillar is the hardest one, action.
Action is the physical execution. You can have the drive, the knowledge, and the strategy, but if you walk into the dinner party and nervously act like you normally do back home, you have failed.
Right, you have to actually do it.
Action is your ability to successfully alter your tone of voice, your body language, and your words to match the new culture in real time.
To really make CQ concrete, let's look at how it applies to daily life, specifically in the workplace. Because most of these people aren't just taking a gap year, they are expats. They are expected to show up to an office or manage a remote team, and they are under immense pressure to perform while navigating this new culture. What happens when an expat manager lacks cultural intelligence?
Without CQ, the workplace becomes a minefield. Let's create a scenario to show the mechanism. Imagine a manager from a very direct culture, like Germany or the US, is sent to lead a team in a culture that values indirect communication and saving face, like Japan or parts of the Middle East.
Okay, so a direct manager and an indirect team.
Right. In a meeting, a local employee presents a project plan that has some flaws.
Yeah.
The manager, acting on their home country rules, gives direct, blunt feedback in front of everyone. This section is wrong, you need to redo the calculations. In the manager's mind, they're being efficient and clear.
But how does the local team interpret that?
The local team interprets it as a brutal, humiliating attack. Because in their culture, you never criticize someone openly in front of a group. It destroys their dignity.
Oh, wow.
The result: the employee loses motivation, the team stops trusting the manager, and productivity collapses. The manager thinks the team is incompetent, and the team thinks the manager is a tyrant. It is a complete breakdown, all because of a lack of cultural intelligence.
But if we replay that exact same scenario with a manager who has high CQ,
Well, if the manager has high CQ, their strategy and action pillars kick in. They recognize the flaw in the presentation, but they know the cultural rule about saving face. So during the meeting, they praise the overall effort. Later, in a private one-on-one conversation, they gently suggest, perhaps we could look at the calculations in this section together.
what's better?
Yeah, the employee understands the feedback perfectly, their dignity is protected, and they fix the error enthusiastically.
That is a brilliant example of how studying the unwritten rules literally saves a business. And the expats aren't just managing employees. Many of them are managing their own families. Moving with kids adds an incredible layer of complexity. You can't just drop a 10-year-old who speaks only English into a local public school in Germany and expect them to be fine.
No, you absolutely cannot. The psychological strain on the child would be immense. This is why expat parents rely heavily on international schools. But the relocation guides offer a very specific strategic tip for choosing an international school. They strongly advise parents to find a school that teaches the exact same educational curriculum the child was learning back in their home country.
You know, I want to highlight why this specific strategy is so crucial for a child's mental health. Imagine a child moving from the UK to Singapore. Every single pillar of their reality has just collapsed. Their house is gone, their friends are gone, the weather is intensely hot, the food in the grocery store is weird, the smells in the street are different, they are experiencing maximum culture shock.
Right, they're deep in the frustration phase immediately.
But if their parents put them in a British international school in Singapore, a powerful mechanism of stability is created. When that child walks into the classroom, they open the exact same math textbook they were using in London. They are studying the exact same history timeline. The structure of the school day is identical.
It is familiar.
Exactly. In a world where everything is terrifyingly new, the curriculum provides safe, predictable anchor. It gives their brain a break.
It creates a zone of comfort. And the guides emphasize that managing a child's transition starts long before they ever see that new school. Just like you spend months preparing visa paperwork, parents must spend months preparing their child's emotional paperwork.
What does that emotional preparation look like?
It is about providing closure and building excitement. You have to allow the child to say proper goodbyes. You organize final parties with their friends. You let them take photos of their favorite parks. You do not just pull them away in the night.
Right, they need to process it.
And simultaneously, you have to sell them on the future.
Ugh.
You show them videos of the new city. You talk about the exotic animals they might see or the cool new sports they can try. You have to make them feel like active participants in a grand adventure, not just luggage being dragged across the world.
Managing those emotions requires so much energy. And frankly, it is not just the kids who struggle with leaving people behind. The adults do too. This brings us to a major theme in the psychology reports: the brutal tug of war between making new friends and staying connected to the people back home.
It is one of the most common issues discussed with expat therapists. You have to find a very delicate balance. If you lean too far in either direction, you create a crisis.
Let's look at the extremes to understand why the balance matters. What happens if I move to a new country, but I spend 4 hours every single day texting and video calling my old friends back home?
Well, if you do that, you are physically living in the new country, but mentally you never left home. You will never leave your apartment. You will not practice the local language. You will not try the local cafes, and you will never meet local people.
So you just stay isolated.
Yes, you are essentially hiding from the culture shock. You will fail to reach the adaptation phase, and you will eventually have to go home because you never built a life.
Okay, so that is the danger of clinging to the past. But what if I do the opposite? What if I say, I am a global citizen now, I am fully immersing myself, and I completely ignore my family and friends back home?
Then you cut off your emotional support system. You are facing the massive stress of culture shock entirely alone. Without your old friends to ground you and remind you of who you are, you will likely develop severe loneliness and depression. You need the roots to keep the tree stable while the branches grow into a new sky.
So we need a strategy to maintain those roots while we grow. The psychological guides offer highly specific tactics for maintaining long-distance friendships. And the very first rule is about time management. You have to stop relying on spontaneous communication.
Exactly. You cannot just call your mother when you are walking to the bus stop because you feel like it.
Why not?
The mechanics of time zones destroy spontaneity. If you are eating lunch in Tokyo, it might be 3:00 a.m. in New York. If you just call randomly, they will be asleep or at work, and you will just get voicemail. Over time, that constant misconnection creates a feeling of abandonment.
To fix this, the experts say you have to treat your friendships like professional commitments. You have to schedule your video calls. You put it on a calendar. We will talk every second Sunday at 9 a.m. my time, 8:00 p.m. your time.
It sounds a bit clinical, but the mechanism works. It removes the anxiety of missed calls, and it gives both people something solid to look forward to.
It creates a reliable structure. The second major piece of advice focuses on the content of the conversation. They call it the rule of two-way communication.
Oh, this is brilliant because it addresses a very common mistake expats make.
What do they do?
When you first move, your life is an explosion of amazing new experiences. You're seeing ancient castles, eating incredible street food, meeting people from all over the world. When you finally get on that scheduled video call with your friend back home, you just want to talk for an hour about how amazing your life is.
Which sounds normal, but if you do that, you slowly destroy the friendship. Why? Because you are making the relationship entirely about you and your exotic life. Your friend back home is probably just dealing with traffic, a boring boss, and doing laundry. If you only talk about castles and beaches, you make them feel insignificant. You create a massive gap in your shared reality.
Exactly. The experts say you have to forcefully practice two-way communication. You share a story about your travels, but then you have to actively stop, ask questions, and genuinely care about their normal routine life.
Right. Ask them how their garden is growing. Ask them about the drama at their local grocery store. By valuing their everyday reality, you prove that the core of the friendship hasn't changed, even if the geography has.
It keeps the power dynamic of the friendship equal. And the guides suggest a third tactic that I find really creative: doing shared activities over video rather than just staring at each other and talking.
Yes, using technology to bridge the physical gap. When you only talk, you eventually run out of things to say. But if you share an experience, it feels like you are in the same room. The guides suggest using video apps to actually live together for an hour.
They give great examples of the mechanics of this. You and your sister back home can agree on a recipe. You both buy the ingredients. Then you set up your laptops in your kitchens, turn on the video call, and you actually cook the meal at the exact same time.
That is so fun.
Yeah, you can complain about chopping the onions together.
Yeah.
And then you sit down and eat the identical meal together.
Yeah.
It tricks the brain into feeling physical proximity. The reports also suggest playing games. You can point the camera down at a table and play a board game. You can play Yahtzee and roll the dice. You can set up a game of Boggle and search for words together. You can even stand back from the camera and play charades.
The mechanism here is playfulness. Laughter and shared concentration bond people much faster than just reciting a list of updates about your week.
So those strategies protect your roots. But to reach that final adaptation phase of culture shock, you also have to build new branches. You have to build a local community. And making friends as an adult is notoriously difficult, let alone in a foreign language. The relocation experts provided some highly practical steps for this.
Yes, they suggest leveraging the few contacts you already have to build a network. The best example is your real estate agent.
I wouldn't have thought of that. How does that work?
Your real estate agent is usually a well-connected local person. The mistake expats make is only talking to them about the apartment lease. The guides say you should ask your agent for lifestyle recommendations. Ask them, who is the most honest local plumber? Where is a good local doctor? What cafe do the actual locals go to?
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
By asking for their expertise, you tap into the local community network immediately, and you start patronizing local businesses instead of just the tourist traps.
You are treating them as a cultural guide, not just a salesperson. Another fantastic strategy the guides emphasize is joining local clubs or sports teams. And the psychological mechanism behind this is very clever.
How so?
Well, if you just walk into a local bar and try to talk to a stranger, the pressure is immense. You have to invent things to talk about. The language barrier is obvious and it is awkward. But if you love playing football or you love painting and you join a local football club or an art class, the pressure disappears.
Because of the activity.
Exactly. The activity itself is the focus. You do not have to be a great conversationalist. You just have to pass the ball or mix the paint. You already have a shared passion, which bypasses the awkward small talk and creates a natural bond.
That shared focus is a powerful bonding agent. And to solidify those bonds, the guides stress one final, critical rule for making local friends. You must try to learn basic phrases of the local language.
And they make it clear you do not have to be fluent. You don't have to debate philosophy in the local tongue.
Exactly. The mechanism here is not about perfect grammar. It is about showing vulnerability and respect. When you make the effort to learn how to say hello, please, thank you, and excuse my poor pronunciation in their language, you are signaling to the locals that you respect their culture.
You are making an effort.
You are stepping out of the arrogant expat bubble. Locals are infinitely more likely to invite you into their social circle if they see you humbling yourself to try their language, even if you make mistakes.
It shows you want to be a participant, not just a spectator. We have walked through so much difficulty today. We started with the dream of a digital nomad visa, but then we unpacked the reality. The hidden taxes on your used furniture, the pet quarantine bills, the year-long planning timeline where you have to throw away your electronics.
Yeah, it is a lot.
The exhaustion of the culture shock crisis phase, the stress of international schools and scheduling video calls just to maintain your sanity. It is a monumental amount of friction. So why on earth are 35 million people doing this? Let's talk about the ultimate payoff.
The payoff is transformative personal growth. People endure all of this friction because surviving it literally changes who they are. The ultimate goal, as we saw in the psychological models, is reaching that adaptation phase.
When you finally adapt, when you can navigate the strange grocery store, laugh at your language mistakes, and understand the unwritten rules of a new society, you gain something incredibly rare. You gain a true global perspective. Your mind permanently expands. You realize deep in your bones that your home country's way of living is just one option out of thousands.
You become cognitively flexible. And if you go through this process with your family, the shared survival mechanism bonds you in a way nothing else can.
Right, because you survived it together.
A family that successfully navigates international customs, school changes, and language barriers using cultural intelligence develops an unbreakable resilience. They learn that they can face massive uncertainty, solve complex problems together, and thrive. They become a highly adaptable team.
That resilience is a superpower. And the business data highlights a fascinating phenomenon regarding what happens when these people eventually decide to go home. The process of returning is called repatriation, and they do not come back as the same people who left.
No, they returned as highly upgraded versions of themselves. The corporate sources show that repatriated professionals possess skills that are incredibly difficult to teach in a classroom. Because they spent years forcing their brains to understand a different cultural rulebook, they have developed elite empathy and conflict resolution skills.
Because they had to use cultural intelligence to survive, they know how to read the room.
Exactly. They are masters of diplomacy. They know how to lead a diverse team of people who have completely different opinions. Because they have lived in a world where opinions differ wildly. They don't panic when communication breaks down. They analyze the cultural disconnect and fix it.
That is so valuable.
They become highly sought after, incredibly valuable global citizens. Companies desperately want leaders who have been tested by the friction of living abroad.
I think there's a perfect analogy to summarize this entire journey. Moving to another country is essentially an intense workout program for your personality.
A workout program. I like that. Break that down.
Think about the mechanics of lifting heavy weights at the gym. When you lift a heavy weight, you are actually creating micro tears in your muscle fibers. It hurts. The next day, you feel sore, tired, and weak.
Yeah, nobody likes the soreness.
But that is exactly what the frustration phase of culture shock is. The new language, the strange customs, the hidden costs. These are the heavy weights tearing down your old assumptions. You feel emotionally sore and exhausted.
But the muscle doesn't stay torn.
Exactly. If you rest, fuel yourself properly, and keep going back to the gym, your body repairs those micro tears, making the muscle much stronger and more flexible than it was before. Moving abroad breaks down your rigid personality and your narrow worldview. It hurts at first, but the healing process builds you back up with massive emotional resilience, cultural intelligence, and a wider mind. You become capable of lifting challenges you never could have handled before you left home.
That is a phenomenal way to synthesize the entire experience.
Hmm.
The pain of the transition is temporary, but the strength and the expanded perspective you gain belong to you forever.
We have truly unpacked a mountain of knowledge today. From the sheer scale of the 35 million remote workers changing the global economy, to the intricate mechanics of digital nomad visas in places like Estonia and Spain.
We covered a lot.
We really did. We've explored the gritty reality of shipping variations, pet quarantines, and the terrifying math of double taxation. We've mapped the psychological terrain from the honeymoon high to the frustration crash, and learned how cultural intelligence and scheduled Yahtzee games can save your sanity.
It is a complex ecosystem of logistics and emotions. But before we finish our conversation today, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought that emerges from all this data.
I love a good final thought. What is it?
We spend so much time talking about how moving abroad forces you to learn about a foreign culture. But the most profound secret hidden in the psychological reports is this. The greatest discovery you make isn't about the new country at all.
It isn't?
No. By looking at the world through someone else's completely different cultural lens, you are suddenly able to see the hidden rules, the strange habits, and the bizarre assumptions of your own culture. Things you have been doing your entire life but never even noticed. You leave home to discover the world, but the ultimate reward is that you finally discover yourself.
You have to step outside the frame to see the picture. That is an incredibly powerful idea to end on. Thank you, Speaker 2, for helping me navigate this fascinating maze of information today. And a huge thank you to you, our listener, for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you feel a little more prepared for whatever adventure comes your way. Take care.